Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. Thanks a lot for the briefing.
You.
You mentioned Ye in South Sudan.
Yeah.
I wanted to know whether, first, I've sort of heard that when the aid was brought in, goes back about 2.5 weeks ago, it was mostly for Dinka that were there, and in fact, several of them were extracted to Juba by the UN, by UNHCR and others, leaving the more local population in advance of a military assault on the town. So I wanted to know, what did you pick up while you were there in terms of the Dinka, non-Dinka split? And also, are you aware of humanitarian agencies of the UN having issues about redeploying Equatorians into predominantly Dinka areas? I guess what I'm saying is, given the tensions in the country, how does this play out in delivering aid? And finally, because it's an OCHA question, I want to ask you. There's an OCHA email that I've seen dated November 7th in Burundi from a Nazarena Ferraro saying that there is famine in the country. And that's since been denied by WFP, saying it's not famine. And I wanted to know, does WFP and OCHA have different definitions of famine? And are you aware of reports or allegations that the government of Burundi is asking WFP to essentially give them cash money to pay their own government employees to do WFP's work?
Yeah.
And how would that be legal, appropriate, or otherwise?
Yeah. Well, on the last one, I mean, it would not be legal or appropriate at all, and WFP would not succumb to any such demand were it made. I have not heard of any such demand being made of WFP, but I can confidently say that they would not succumb to that. On the issue of how we characterize the food insecurity situation, the FAO and WFP are the authority on calling famine, right? That's their expertise. If an OCHA colleague in an internal email is expressing their concern that something looks like a famine, that it's a very serious situation, then that is what it is. I mean, there is obviously a major concern, but it's not our call on the OCHA side to call it as a famine, and therefore, you get an internal email, that's fine, but for sure it's WFP and FAO that will make that determination, and we're very transparent about it. There are statistics. I mean, this is a statistically based if you like, determination, which has to be, if you like, publicly communicated, and it's the same standard across the globe. So I don't know much more about that, but that's essentially what it is. On the tensions for our staff in South Sudan, absolutely. Our national staff, who are doing a fantastic job and continue to work tirelessly, even though their own families are caught up in the consequences of the conflict. Yes, for us, it's a major security issue. It's a major concern, and we've also found that it has increased the cost for us. For example, in other countries, we would have more nationalization of certain functions, but because you don't have the same degree of freedom of movement and so forth for our national colleagues or security, then it is more reliance on internationals in some respects. So yes is the answer to your question. It's a real issue for us that our colleagues are exposed in the tensions that are there. And when you have the advisor to the Secretary General saying that we are looking at a possible genocide on the horizon, we have to be, alarmed to action. Alarmed to action. It is not enough just to read that report. It's not enough just to repeat that concern. There has to be a reaction, and a reaction of action that actually prevents that from happening. This is something that is being alerted to an international community that has not just the responsibility, but also has the capacity. And we have said this many, many times, never again, And here we are with, on the horizon, this awful prospect that must be prevented. So again, I want to repeat and reiterate on that. On the delivery of assistance to Ye, the initial delivery, yeah, it was, again, because of the restriction of movement, they were not able to get it beyond the city itself. So only people who were there, if I recall my briefing correctly, because it didn't happen when I was there, that they were limited in terms of being able to distribute only to those that were actually there. And again, if I recall my briefing correctly, the contractors, not the UN, but the contractors who had delivered on behalf of the UN agencies delivering the aid, they also took people back to Juba, but it wasn't the UN organized. It was the contractors taking advantage of empty trucks and people taking advantage of that to go back. And that's why personally I was, I spent a whole day in Ye, initially obviously to meet the people. What I got in my conversations, and remember this is only a snapshot that I was exposed to, it isn't the totality of the situation. I didn't get from the people that I was meeting the sort of, dynamic of blame. I got from the people the horror of their situation and their circumstance, and they were not in the, if you like, the rhetoric of blaming one ethnic group over another. I actually didn't hear one comment from them on that, but they were blaming those that were doing the killing and the raping and so forth, not as an ethnicity, but as people. Which, of course, means that they have not been captured by the hysteria of, ethnic, a blind ethnic dimension to this, in terms of what they're experiencing, but rather that it's unacceptable, whatever your ethnicity and whomever you are. But having said that, again, there is a very intense ethnic dynamic to all of this, which has been the alarm has been raised by the Secretary General's advisor, and that's the bigger picture. That's the wider picture, and we need to, as I say, be alarmed to action around that alert that we have received. But the rest of my day was spent at that checkpoint trying to get through, because we have an obligation to get the aid out to others, not just where we can more easily reach, but to go beyond that. And while I didn't succeed, it does give me even more insight to the nature of the problem and the fact that we have to redouble our efforts to get through to everybody, everywhere. Now, I'm very pleased that overall in South Sudan, the humanitarian community has a very good track record of getting out to various places. And we have a massive logistical capacity. So we're not blocked, by people on the ground as easily as we are elsewhere, because we've got airlift capacity. So we airdrop into places that we can't actually physically get access to. And one of the things that, as a follow-up to my mission, is a plan to use air assets to get those supplies to where we were blocked from. And again, I'm grateful to our donors that enable us to have that sort of capacity to overcome some of these obstacles.
And just